Hey guys, Garrett here from iOS Pro. Today, I'll be going over the evolution of every phone that Apple has ever made from 2005 up to now. Believe me, it is extremely interesting how Apple learns to make good phones. So let's get started. In 2005, Apple teamed up with Motorola to develop a phone. It was called the iTunes phone. It basically had an iTunes music player built into it to sync 100 songs. It had stereo speakers, stereo headphones and headset, and it was built to sync 100 songs from iTunes onto the phone. Apple was not very happy about this, and this phone is known as the E1 model, the very first model from Motorola they collaborated with. And later on, Apple redesigned it with the E2 model to make it easier to use. But if you guys go watch the keynote, which is on YouTube today, Steve Jobs was not very happy about using it. It was hard to use. He even clicked the wrong button during the demo. That's how you could tell Steve Jobs was not very happy about that. Then they discontinued it in 2006. Then 8 months later, Apple released the iPhone 2G. So the iPhone 2G was released on June 29, 2007. And by the way, there's no iPhone 1. I've seen that question a lot throughout the years since 2016. Believe me, I've seen it a lot. And Apple's catchphrase slash advertising motto to make people get into the iPhone, all that, was "This is only the beginning," and boy, they're right. You'll see what I mean as we go on through this video. And the iPhone 2G only supports 2G networking. It connects by the 30-pin connector, supports Bluetooth 2.0 with a distance of 130 feet. I know this because I tested it for myself. Even though the AirPods don't support music playback through the original iPhone, only on the 3G and newer with 3.0 or newer, the voice memo app does. So I recorded a voice memo on the original iPhone, connected my AirPods, and had my dad hold it, and I walked like this until it cut out. That's how I discovered the distance range. And has 5-hour battery life with a 3.5-inch LCD display, and it has a 2-megapixel camera. Speaking of 2 megapixels, some of you guys may already know, but partially don't know, is that most iPhones have a cover that goes over the camera to protect it from debris and dirt and all that. But on the iPhone 2G though, a lot of you guys may not know this, but the cover on the original iPhone can be removed. And I want to show you guys the effects of what that did after I took that cover off, which I already did. So if guys look at the bottom right of your guys' screens where you see me talking, I'll show you guys some of the images from before and after I took it off. So this first image I took in the summer of 2022. This is before I took the camera cover off. See, with the camera covered by a protector lens, see, it looks all muddy and all that, kind of like you guys would expect. But the second image is with the camera cover taken off. See, before, after, on, off. You guys can see the improvement it did. See, with it on, it distorted the image, made it look all muddy and everything. But with it taken off, it lets more light in, makes the image a lot more clear. It's about the same as in between the 3GS and the iPhone 4 quality, right in between it. I'm not sure, but somewhere in that range. See how much better it looks? So you guys try it for yourself. Just take the back panel off, and the little camera piece you can just pry off gently. That's it. And the iPhone 2G came in 3 storage capacities: 4 gig, 8 gig, and 16 gigabytes. And the starting price in 2007 was $599 for the original price. But then in late 2007, Apple discontinued the 4 gigabyte and the 16 gigabyte option and kept the 8 gigabyte for $399. So in September 2007, after the iPod Touch came out, which I'll do another video about every iPod later on, they actually decreased the price to $399. This is before the 3G came out. So Apple is going to the right track by making it more affordable at that point. And Apple sold 6 million iPhones before they ran out, like before the 3G came out. And it was discontinued in 2008. The operating system that the original iPhone ran was iPhone OS 1.0 to 3.1.3. And so after that, next up, Apple released the iPhone 3G. So the iPhone 3G came out on July 11, 2008, and Apple's catchphrase / advertising motto was twice as fast for half the price. And the number one feature that the iPhone 3G introduced was, of course, 3G network support for faster networking. That's what the catchphrase meant. 3G speeds for half the price, not the phone itself. Because the iPhone 3G and 2G have the exact same processors, along with the same exact size camera and everything, like 2 megapixel camera as well. But the iPhone 3G introduced a new plastic back design. The iPhone 3G also had better speakers. So instead of a plastic bottom covering the speaker, it's now an open speaker. Makes it for much better improved audio and everything like that. Same for the microphone. Much better audio for voice memos and voice recording. It also was more affordable as well. From $399 and $599 down to $199. So much more affordable where everyone can get one. And much better prices at that time. It even came in 2 storage capacities, 8GB and 16GB. The 16GB offered a white iPhone as well. You guys don't remember that, but white guys may remember that. It also sold in 70 countries from the original 6 from 2007 as well. So you can have it in more countries as well. Has about 8-hour battery life as well. So about 3 hours better than the original iPhone, lasts all day, which is nice. And Apple sold 20 million units from 2008 to 2010 before the iPhone 3G was discontinued from Apple. And the operating system that ran was iPhone OS 2.0 to 4.2.1. You could also install custom firmware like WhiteDoor, but I would just keep mine on the stock firmware. Runs much better and all that. So next up, Apple released the iPhone 3GS. So the iPhone 3GS came out on June 19, 2009, and Apple's catchphrase / advertising motto was the fastest, most powerful iPhone yet. And boy, they're right. The iPhone 3GS featured video recording at 480p frames per second, a built-in compass for navigation, a faster processor, which I mentioned just a second ago, the classic voice control, which is similar to Siri, but just basic commands like time, music, and all that. The accessibility features, which is white and black, zoom, voiceover, and other stuff like that. And for the first one, to get battery percentage as well for iOS 3. The 8-hour battery life, slightly better than the iPhone 3G, more like 7 because the gaming, they added on, throttled down the battery just a little bit. I'm not sure, but that's what I do know. And it had the 3 megapixel camera compared to the 2 megapixel camera on the 2G and 3G. It came in 3 storage configurations, 8 gig, 16 gig, and 32 gigabyte. The 32 gigabyte came in white as well. I'm not sure about the 16 gig, but I do know the 32 gig came in 2 colors. I do know that. The starting price was $199. Apple sold more than 1 million units from 2009 up to 2012. It was discontinued in 2010, but the 8 gigabyte model was discontinued in 2012, 100%. The operating system that the iPhone 3GS ran was iPhone OS 3.0 all the way up to 6.1.6. Then in 2010, Apple released the iPhone 4. So the iPhone 4 came out on June 24, 2010, and Apple's catchphrase / advertising motto was, "This changes everything again." And they're right, because the number one key feature of the iPhone 4 is its new design. So it has this new stainless steel design with glass in the front and back. That was the second new feature, actually, the design and the glass on the back. It featured an LED flash, a new front-facing camera, a retina display, and it features the Apple A4 chip, the micro SIM card, which is smaller than the 3GS and earlier, because they needed the space, a bigger battery for 8-hour battery life, a 5 megapixel camera, and introduced FaceTime, even a gyroscope. The storage options were 8 gig, 16 gig, and 32 gigabyte. The starting price for the iPhone 4 was $199, it was discontinued in 2013. Just like the older iPhones, Apple sold 1.7 million iPhone 4s until 2013. The operating system was iOS 4.0 through 7.1.2. Then in 2011, Apple released the iPhone 4S. So the iPhone 4S came out on October 4, 2011. Apple's catchphrase was, "It's the most amazing iPhone yet." And that's because the first main feature of the 4S, which was Siri, the most advanced virtual assistant out there for that time. Even today, it still is. And the second feature was an 8 megapixel camera, the Apple A5 chip for better gaming, 8-hour battery life, 4G network support, and the new antenna system, which fixed the antenna gate issue where you covered an antenna and a signal would drop. That would only still happen today if you covered every antenna. That's the only time that would happen. The storage capacities are 8 gig, 16 gig, 32 gig, and 64 gigabyte, starting at $199. Apple sold 60 plus million units from 2011 to 2014, and the 32 and 64 gigabyte was discontinued in 2012. The 16 gigabyte got discontinued in 2013, and the 8 gigabyte in 2014. And the operating systems it ran with iOS 5 to 9.3.6. Then in 2012, Apple released the iPhone 5. So the iPhone 5 came out on September 21st, 2012, and Apple's advertising motto or catchphrase was, "The biggest thing to happen to iPhone since iPhone." And the iPhone 5's main features were a new 4-inch Retina display, and it has a brand new iSight camera, that's what we still use today, but Apple calls it wide camera rather than iSight now. And it featured a new design, slimmer aluminum and glass, much slimmer and sleek as well. Features the Apple A6 chip, the first iPhone to get the lightning connector, which we use today. The headphone jack was moved from the top to the bottom. It had the nano SIM card, and it supported LTE for the first time. It supports about 10-hour battery life, and is for the first phone to get panorama. The storage options was 16, 32, and 64 gigabyte. The starting price was $199. It was discontinued totally in 2013, and Apple sold 27.4 million iPhone 5s before it was discontinued. The operating systems was iOS 6 through 10.3.4. Then in 2013, Apple released the iPhone 5C. So the iPhone 5C came out on September 20th, 2013. And Apple's catchphrase or advertising motto was, "For the colorful." And the number one feature of the iPhone 5C is that it came in 5 nice colors. And it came in a plastic frame and came in an iPod Touch-like box too as well. A slightly bigger battery than the iPhone 5. An HD front camera for the first time, the Apple A6 chip, just like the iPhone 5, about 10-hour battery life. It was the first phone to ship with iOS 7 and have the iOS 7 font on the back. It came in 3 storage configurations, 8, 16, and 32 gigabyte. Started at $99. The 16 and 32 gigabyte was discontinued in 2014. The 8 gigabyte was discontinued in 2015. Apple sold 12 million iPhone 5Cs. And Apple's operating system that would run the 5C was iOS 7 through 10.3.4. But some of you guys may say, iOS 10.3.4 is only for the iPhone 5. But no, the file for the iPhone 5 for 10.3.4 is actually compatible with the 5C if you were to store it via IPSW. Believe me, it works. I've tried it for myself 4 times throughout many years. Then in 2013 again, then Apple released the iPhone 5S. The iPhone 5S came out on September 20th, 2013, and Apple's catchphrase / advertising motto was forward thinking. The number one feature of the iPhone 5S was Touch ID for faster and more secure way to lock and unlock your iPhone. And it featured a new gold color, True Tone flash, the Apple A7 chip, which was a 64-bit chip. It featured 10-hour battery life, the first slow motion camera in an iPhone, the M7 motion coprocessor, and it came in 3 storage capacities, 16, 32, and 64 gigabyte, and the starting price was $199. Apple sold 125 million iPhone 5Ss until 2016, because just like the iPhone 5C, the Apple discontinued the storage capacity in certain years, which is 2014 and 2016. And the operating system that the iPhone 5S can run is iOS 7 through 12.5.7. And surprisingly, iOS 12 is still getting updated today, which is pretty surprising. Then in 2014, Apple released the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6 Plus. Both phones came out on September 19, 2014, and Apple's catchphrase / motto was bigger than bigger. It featured the Apple A8 chip, an all-new Retina HD display, the 4.7-inch and 5.5-inch displays, which meant the iPhone 6 Plus can get a landscape on home screen, pretty much anywhere like iPad could. The new barometer and the M8 motion coprocessor work together for health and fitness tracking. The iPhone 6 got the optical image stabilizer for the 6 Plus, digital for the 6. Featured the design we used until the iPhone 11 in 2019, NFC chip for Apple Pay, the Wi-Fi calling support, power button now moves to the side as well. Apple introduced 3 storage capacities on launch, 16, 64, and 128 gigabyte. Then in early 2017, they upgraded with a new 32 storage option. Apple sold nearly 223 million iPhones in 2014. Speaking of that, iPhone 6 line in New York was 21 blocks long on launch day. It went from 57th to 58th Avenue down to 79th Avenue, which is crazy. I was around to remember that, 100%. The starting prices were $199 and $299. It was discontinued in 2015, 16, and 18. The operating system that ran were iOS 8 through 12.5.7. Then in 2015, Apple released the iPhone 6s and iPhone 6s Plus. Both iPhones came out on September 25, 2015, and Apple's catchphrase was, "The only thing that's changed is everything." Featured the Apple A9 chip, came in a new rose gold color, stronger glass so it won't shatter as easily, 3D touch, the second generation Touch ID sensor, a 12 megapixel camera with 4K video support, live photos, about 10-hour battery life, and a stronger series aluminum, 7000 to be exact, fixed bend gate. Came in 3 storage options, 16, 64, and 128 gigabyte. Started at $199. Almost 175 million iPhones were sold combined. It was discontinued in 2016 and 2018. The operating system that ran with iOS 9 through 15.7.5. Then in 2016, Apple released the iPhone SE first generation. So the first gen SE came out on March 31st, 2016. Apple's motto was a big step for small, because the iPhone SE was just an iPhone 6s and a 5s shell without 3D touch or second gen Touch ID, with the A9 chip and pretty much all the same features from the 6s. The storage capacities was 16 and 64 gigabyte. Later, Apple added 32 and 128. Starting price was $399. Apple discontinued it in 2017 and 2018. The operating system was iOS 9.3 through 15.7.5. Then in 2016 September, Apple released the iPhone 7 and iPhone 7 Plus. Both phones came out on September 16, 2016, and Apple's catchphrase was, "This is 7." The main key features of the iPhone 7 and 7 Plus were, first of all, the 3D touch home button, and it had the telephoto camera on the 7 Plus, removed the headphone jack, the Apple A10 Fusion chip, water and dust resistant, and it had stereo speakers. And it had 14-hour battery life on the 7, 15 on the 7 Plus. The storage capacities were 32, 128, and 256 gigabyte. The starting price was $769. And Apple sold 159 million iPhones, and it was discontinued in 2019. The operating system was iOS 10 through 15.7.5. Then, in 2017, Apple released the iPhone 8 and iPhone 8 Plus. Both phones came out on September 22nd, 2017, And Apple's catchphrase was a new generation of iPhone. The 4 key features are, first of all, wireless charging, the glass back, the Apple A11 Bionic chip, and the True Tone display. It had 14-hour battery life for the 8 and 15-hour for the 8 Plus. The storage configurations are 64 and 256GB. The starting price is $699 and $799. It was discontinued in 2020. Apple sold 86.3 million iPhones before it got discontinued. And the operating systems it ran were iOS 11 up to now, because iPhone 8 still supports iOS 16. Then, again in 2017, Apple released the iPhone 10. The iPhone 10 came out on November 3rd, 2017, and Apple's catchphrase was, "Say hello to the future." The 5 key features of the iPhone 10 were, obviously, the new stainless steel frame, Face ID, the OLED display, the Apple A11 Bionic chip, and the new swipe gestures to navigate the phone. It had about 17-hour battery life as well. The storage capacities were 64 and 256GB. The starting price was a whopping $999. And over 130 million iPhone 10s were sold in 2017. It was discontinued in 2018. The operating system were iOS 11 up to now. Then, in 2018, Apple released the iPhone XS and iPhone XS Max. Both iPhones came out on September 21st, 2018. And Apple's catchphrase was, "Welcome to the big screens." The 4 key features of the iPhone XS were, first of all, dual SIM support. The second, the A12 Bionic chip, the new gold color, and obviously the bigger screens. 5.8 inch and 6.5 inch, had about 18-hour battery life. The storage capacities were 64, 128, and 256GB. The starting price was $999 and $1099. Apple sold 48 million iPhone XSs combined. It was discontinued in 2019. And the operating systems were iOS 12 up to now. Then again in 2018, Apple released the iPhone XR. The iPhone XR came out on October 26, 2018, and Apple's catchphrase was, "Brilliant in every way." The iPhone XR has the exact same stuff as the iPhone XS, but with 4 key differences. 6 colors in aluminum housing, an LCD display, haptic touch, and no telephoto camera. Everything else is pretty much the same with the XS. Has 3 hours more battery life than the iPhone 8. Came in 3 storage capacities, 64, 128, and 256GB. Starting price was $749. And Apple sold 77 million iPhone XRs before it got discontinued in 2021. It ran iOS 12 up to now. Then, in 2019, Apple released the iPhone 11 Pro and 11 Pro Max. Both iPhones came out on September 20th, 2019, and Apple's catchphrase was Pro cameras, Pro display, and Pro performance. The 4 key features are, first of all, the A13 Bionic chip, the ultra-wide camera for a triple camera system, deep fusion for better photos and video, and the U1 chip. It also had a matte texture back. 4 more hours than the 11 Pro, and 5 more hour battery on the Pro Max. Came in 3 storage capacities, 64, 256, and 512GB. Starting price was $999. Apple sold 6.7 million iPhones until it was discontinued in 2020. The operating systems were iOS 11 up to now. Then again in 2019, Apple released the iPhone 11. The iPhone 11 came out on September 20th, 2019. And Apple's catchphrase was, "Just the right amount of everything." There are 4 main key features of the iPhone 11, which is, first of all, the ultra-wide camera, the A13 Bionic chip, the 6.1-inch LCD display, and it was made of aluminum rather than stainless steel. And it had no telephoto camera. It lasted 1 hour longer than the iPhone XR. The 3 storage capacities were 64, 128, and 256GB. The starting price was $699, Apple sold 64.8 million iPhones before it was discontinued in 2022. The operating systems were iOS 13 up to now. Then, in 2020, Apple introduced the iPhone SE second generation. The second gen iPhone SE came out on April 24, 2020. Apple's catchphrase was, "Lots to love, less to spend." The three key features were Apple A13 Bionic, 3 color options in portrait mode. Came in 3 storage capacities, 64, 256, and 512GB. Starting price was $399. Apple sold 24.2 million iPhones before it got discontinued in 2022. The operating systems were iOS 13.4 up to now. Then, in 2020, again, Apple released the iPhone 12 series. The iPhone 12 series came out on October 23rd, 2020 and November 13, 2020. The catchphrases were, "It's a leap year," and "Blast past fast." The 4 key features are, first of all, the flat housing design, the new ceramic shield, A14 Bionic, and 5G network support. It also got the MagSafe support as well. Had about 17-hour battery life across all models. The storage options were 64, 128, 256, and 512GB. The 512 option only for the Pro models. The 64 option only for the standard, the Mini. Apple sold 100 million units before it was discontinued in 2021 and 2022. And the starting prices are $999 and $699. The standard 12 is still being sold today. The operating systems were iOS 14 up to now. Then, in 2021, Apple introduced the iPhone 13 series. The 13 series came out on September 24, 2021. Apple's catchphrases were, "Oh so Pro," and "Your new superpower." The key features of the phones were A15 Bionic, sensor shift on all models, cinematic mode, and night mode for all cameras. Lasted 1.5 hours and 2.5 hours longer for both series. The storages were 128, 256, 512, and 1TB. 1TB only for the Pros. Starting prices were $999 and $699. 40 plus million iPhone 13s were sold until it was discontinued in 2022 for the Pro lineup. The other 2 are still being sold right now. The operating systems were iOS 15 up to now. Then in 2022, Apple released the iPhone SE 3rd generation. The 3rd gen iPhone SE came out on March 18, 2022. Apple's catchphrase was, "Love the power, love the price." The iPhone SE 3rd gen was basically the iPhone 13 put into a cheaper, smaller housing, except for 4 features missing, which was MagSafe, the millimeter 5G antenna, the telephoto camera, in cinematic mode. It also didn't have ultrawide, but everything else pretty much the same, like the A15 Bionic and 5G support. And the storage options were 64, 128, and 256GB. The starting price was $429. Apple sold more than 22 million units and is still being sold today. The operating systems were iOS 15.4 up to now. Then again in 2022, Apple released the iPhone 14 series. The iPhone 14 series came out on September 16, 2022. The 14 Plus came out on October 7, 2022. Apple's 2 catchphrases were Pro, Beyond, the second, Wonderful. So the iPhone 14 series were in general similar, except for some differences. The standard 14's got the A15 Bionic, satellite and crash detection, along with action mode and eSIM. The Pro models had a few more ones, which is the A16 chip, dynamic island, and always on display. Everything else was pretty much the same, just for the key differences. The storage options were 128, 256, 512, and 1TB. The 1TB only on the Pros. The starting prices were $799 and $999. Apple sold 66 million iPhone 14s combined, and it had all-day battery life, about 18 to 20 hours. About. in the operating system for iOS 16 up to now. Alright, so that is the evolution of every phone Apple has ever made. It's surprising to see how far they've come, from the iTunes phone 2005 to the 14 Pro Max today. Later this year, we're rumored to get the iPhone 15 with some new features. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but we're going to get the 15 models later this year. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up for the video. Peace out.